Imagine waking beside someone you chose. No wedding ring, no dating app, no written love letter, no word we can recover for romance, just another human, sleeping close enough to hear breathing, in a world where tomorrow was never guaranteed. Did ancient humans actually fall in love? Or are we taking a modern emotion, wrapping it in animal skins, and projecting it backward? The uncomfortable answer is, we cannot excavate a feeling. Love leaves no fossil, but attachment leaves consequences. And once you start looking for those, the ancient world becomes surprisingly intimate. For most of human history, survival was not an individual project. Children took years to become independent. Food had to be shared. Injuries could turn ordinary life dangerous. Pregnancy and infancy created enormous demands. One person alone was vulnerable, so close relationships mattered. But practical cooperation is not automatically love. You can share resources without romance. You can raise children through obligation. You can stay beside someone because leaving is worse. That distinction matters. Because archaeology can show us behavior, but behavior does not reveal motive cleanly. Still, biology gives us another clue. Humans are unusually capable of pair bonding. In 2019, anthropologists Ryan Schacht and Karen Kramer reviewed evidence on human mating systems. Across enormous cultural variation, they found one pattern kept returning. Stable pair bonds were widespread, even where marriage rules, sexual behavior, and household structures looked radically different. Humans were not locked into one perfect system, far from it. But forming durable attachments between partners appears deeply embedded in human social life. And that raises a strange possibility. Romantic attachment may be far older than anything we would recognize as romance. No candlelight, no anniversary dinner, probably no argument about unread text messages. But the machinery underneath? Desire, preference, jealousy. Separation distress. Comfort from a familiar person. Those systems did not need poetry before they could exist. Your brain does not wait for culture to invent a greeting card. The deeper mechanism involves ancient reward and attachment systems in the brain. Dopamine helps make another person feel important. Oxytocin and vasopressin are involved in social bonding and attachment. Memory turns one face, one smell, one voice into something different from everyone else. That does not prove an ancient couple whispered eternal devotion, but it makes the opposite claim difficult too. To argue ancient humans could not love, you would need to explain why humans possessed powerful bonding machinery, depended heavily on social partners, and yet somehow lacked emotional attachment until very recently. And then the archaeological record gets stranger. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, Neanderthal remains have forced researchers to rethink what ancient care looked like. In 2019, archaeologist Penny Spikins and colleagues examined evidence surrounding severely injured Neanderthals. One individual, Shanidar 1, survived for years with major physical impairments. His arm was badly damaged. His leg was injured. He likely had serious vision and hearing problems. Whatever happened socially, this was not effortless survival. Someone tolerated the burden. Someone shared space and resources. Someone kept a vulnerable individual inside the social world. That is not proof of romantic love. He could have been a relative, a respected elder, a useful knowledge keeper, or simply a group member whose survival benefited everyone. But notice what has changed. The stereotype of ancient humans as emotionally crude survival machines starts becoming harder to defend. Care has a cost. Long-term care has a bigger cost. And repeated costly care suggests that relationships could matter beyond immediate usefulness. Then comes death. In 2020, archaeologist Emma Pomeroy and her team reported new Neanderthal remains from Shanidar Cave. The body appeared deliberately placed in a depression beside earlier remains. The discovery strengthened the case that Neanderthals sometimes treated their dead in organized, meaningful ways. Again, caution matters. A burial is not a love letter. People bury the dead for hygiene, ritual, fear, status, tradition, or practical reasons. And humans are excellent at seeing emotion in silence. Put two skeletons near each other and suddenly somebody invents prehistoric soulmates. That is exactly the trap we should avoid. Maybe pair bonds were mostly economic. Maybe attraction was brief, while kinship carried the real weight. Maybe many relationships were arranged by family pressures, social obligations, exchange, or simple demographic necessity. In a tiny mobile group, your romantic options were not exactly infinite. There was no mysterious stranger appearing across a crowded coffee shop. There may have been 12 exhausted people you already knew. And prehistoric life was not one culture anyway. Ancient humans lived across different climates, populations, technologies, and social systems for immense stretches of time. There was almost certainly no single ancient dating strategy. Even today, love does not create one universal arrangement. People bond, people separate, people cheat, people grieve, people remarry, people stay together for practical reasons, and people confuse desire, attachment, security, habit, and love constantly. Why would the ancient world have been emotionally simpler? That is the skeptical case, and it deserves to stand. We cannot point to a skeleton and identify butterflies in the stomach. We cannot recover the private meaning of a touch. We cannot know whether two people shared tenderness, resentment, obligation, passion, or all four before breakfast. Archaeology preserves bones better than feelings. But here is where the skeptic runs into biology again. Modern romantic love is not one mysterious emotion. It is a bundle of older systems working together. Sexual attraction can pull people together. Attachment can make separation painful. Familiarity can create safety. Shared parenting can deepen cooperation. Memory can turn ordinary objects into emotional landmines. Lose someone important today, and your body reacts. Sleep changes. Attention changes. Stress changes. Appetite can change. The absence becomes physical. There is no obvious reason to assume those basic systems appeared only after cities, writing, or formal marriage. In fact, the demands of ancient life may have made dependable bonds especially valuable. Imagine raising a child who remains dependent for years while constantly moving, sharing food, learning landscapes, maintaining alliances, and managing injuries. A trusted partner is not merely romantic decoration. That person can become part of your survival system. And that is where love gets complicated. Natural selection does not need to invent poetry. It needs behaviors that work. If attachment made partners stay near each other, share burdens, protect offspring, or return after conflict, then an emotion could be useful precisely because it felt bigger than calculation. You do not experience love as a reproductive spreadsheet. That would be horrifying. You experience longing, comfort, obsession, jealousy, relief, grief. Evolution can build mechanisms without explaining them to the person using them. And culture later gives those mechanisms names. Songs, marriage, promises, symbols, rules, stories. The biology may be ancient. The script around it changes. So did ancient humans fall in love? Almost certainly, if by love we mean powerful selective attachment, desire, comfort, and distress at separation. But did they understand love exactly as you do? Probably not. Your idea of romance was built by your society, your expectations, your stories, your technology, and your personal history. An ancient human could have felt something intensely familiar while explaining it in a completely unfamiliar way. And perhaps that is the most unsettling part. You do not need to imagine them as modern couples. You only need to imagine one person becoming irreplaceable to another. One familiar voice changing the feeling of danger. One absence making a shelter feel wrong. One death leaving a gap that practical survival could not explain away. We will never excavate the first time that happened. There is no fossil-labeled love. But when you wake beside someone you cannot imagine losing, the strange part may not be how modern that feeling is. It may be how ancient.